Rome. Ancient Rome, condemned to the earth. Rome dazzled the ancient world with marble forums, aqueducts, and arenas. It called itself civilization's pinnacle. But beneath its shining architecture existed another Rome, a buried Rome, a Rome made of tunnels, mines, and quarries, where the condemned were sent not to serve a sentence, but to vanish inside labor. This system was known as damnatio ad metallo, condemnation to the mines. It was not imprisonment in the modern sense. It was extraction disguised as punishment. Political dissidents, criminals, prisoners of war, slaves deemed disobedient, all were fed into Rome's underground economy. There were no release dates, no appeals, only quotas. Torchlight flickered across suffocating shafts. Dust filled lungs until breathing itself became agony. Chains scraped stone. Overseers enforced productivity with whips, not clocks. Men worked until collapse. Cave-ins buried the living beside the dead. And, when bodies failed, they were replaced. Above ground, Rome flourished. Temples rose. Roads stretched across continents. Statues immortalized emperors, built in part by those buried alive beneath them. Rome called this justice, but it was industrialized disappearance. And nothing silences rebellion like sending it underground forever. The Spanish Inquisition, the body as confession. In late 15th century Spain, imprisonment became theological. The Spanish Inquisition was established in 1478. Its stated purpose, religious purity. Its hidden purpose, control. Cells were not designed merely to hold the accused, but to destabilize them. Confession was the currency of survival, and pain was often the negotiator. Interrogation rooms blurred the line between legality and terror. Torture, though regulated on paper, became a tool to produce spiritual truth. The irony was chilling. The institution claimed to save souls, while destroying bodies. Isolation intensified paranoia. The accused did not always know their accusers. Evidence could be anonymous. Suspicion alone could trigger confinement. Fear became contagious. And when sentences were pronounced, imprisonment, confiscation of property, public humiliation, it was not merely punishment, it was theater. A warning stage for society. The prison cell became a sermon. One that said, obedience is safety. Doubt is danger. The Bastille, imprisoned by paper. In 17th and 18th century France, imprisonment could begin with a signature. The Bastille was not the largest prison in Europe, but it became a symbol of arbitrary power. Through lettres de cachet, the king could imprison individuals without trial. No court, no defense, no timeline. A sealed letter, and a life vanished. Inside the fortress, the cruelty was not always physical. It was temporal. Indefinite detention erodes the mind. Days lose shape. Years lose meaning. A person does not know when freedom might return, or if it ever will. When revolutionaries stormed the Bastille in 1789, only 7 prisoners were inside. Yet the symbolism was seismic, because what the people attacked was not the building, it was the idea. The idea that power could cage without explanation. British prison hulks, rot in still water. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, Britain faced overcrowded prisons, so it turned to ships. Decommissioned naval vessels were anchored along rivers, converted into floating prisons. These hulks rarely sailed. They decayed. Men were crammed below deck in darkness, thick with humidity and disease. Ventilation was minimal, sanitation worse. Typhus and cholera spread easily. Prisoners labored by day and returned to floating coffins by night. The irony was bitter. Britain ruled the seas, and yet used its ships to rot its own prisoners in place. They were not meant to rehabilitate, they were meant to store, until transportation or death. Devil's Island, the dry guillotine. Off the coast of French Guiana lay Devil's Island, a penal colony established in 1852. It was exile weaponized. Ocean currents acted as walls. Jungle acted as guard. Escape was nearly impossible. Prisoners faced brutal heat, disease, malnutrition, forced labor. Many died within years. It earned the nickname the dry guillotine. Not swift execution, but slow destruction. Even Captain Alfred Dreyfus, wrongfully convicted of treason in 1894, was sent there. His case shocked France, but for thousands of others, no one was watching. Devil's Island did not simply punish, it erased. Tsarist Russia. Exile to Siberia. In Imperial Russia, punishment stretched across geography. Exile to Siberia became a standard sentence. Known as katorga, penal labor camps were established in remote frozen landscapes. Prisoners marched thousands of miles. Chains clinked across snow. Labor included mining, logging, infrastructure building. Winter itself was a jailer. Distance from society became psychological annihilation. To be sent to Siberia was to be removed from memory. The state did not need walls. The climate did the work. The Gulag, corrective labor as industry. In the Soviet Union under Stalin, imprisonment became industrial. The Gulag system expanded dramatically in the 1930s. Millions passed through forced labor camps. Official language called it corrective labor. Reality called it survival against starvation. Prisoners built canals, railways, industrial projects in extreme climates. Work quotas were tied to rations. Fail to meet them, and you starved. The logic was terrifying. Productivity equaled worth. Exhaustion equaled guilt. The state framed suffering as necessity, but necessity has buried more people than war. Nazi concentration. Camps. The systematized a bias. In 1933, Dachau opened in Germany. It became the prototype for a network of camps, initially holding political prisoners, soon expanding to target Jews, Roma, dissidents, and others. The camps combined imprisonment, forced labor, and systemic dehumanization. Identity was replaced by number, clothing replaced by uniform stripes. Daily life governed by arbitrary cruelty. Modern bureaucracy enabled medieval brutality. The prison was not hidden. It was normalized. An entire state apparatus engineered to erase millions. And in doing so, exposed how efficient cruelty can become when dressed as policy. Cellular jail. Isolation as architecture. In the Andaman Islands, British colonial authorities built the cellular jail in 1906. It was designed with solitary confinement at its core. Each prisoner isolated in individual cells. No communication, no collective resistance. Political dissidents from India were sent across the sea. Kalapani. The Yas. Distance severed cultural ties. Solitude attacked sanity. Hunger strikes were met with force feeding. The building itself was psychological warfare. The empire feared unity, so it engineered separation. Tuol Sling, the school that became a torture machine in Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge. A high school was turned into prison S-21. Classrooms became cells. Blackboards were replaced with chains. Known as Tuol Sling, it processed thousands of prisoners accused of treason, often without evidence. Interrogations were systematic, confessions extracted through torture. Almost no one left alive. The regime feared enemies everywhere, so it manufactured them inside prison walls. A place once meant for learning became a factory of forced guilt. Alcatraz, the rock of isolation. In the cold waters of San Francisco Bay stood Alcatraz, escape-proof by geography alone. It held America's most dangerous federal inmates. Gang leaders, escape artists, violent offenders, but its true weapon was psychological. Total routine, total surveillance, total isolation. Prisoners could see the mainland, freedom visible but unreachable. Hope itself became torture. The message was clear. You are close enough to remember freedom, but never touch it. Hanoi Hilton. War inside walls. During the Vietnam War, the Hualo prison held American POWs. Nicknamed the Hanoi Hilton, captives endured beatings, solitary confinement, stress positions, and psychological pressure. Interrogation aimed not just at intelligence, but propaganda. War did not stop at the battlefield. It continued in cells, where survival depended not on weapons, but endurance of mind. Laogai, China's labor through reform system. In communist China, the Laogai prison network functioned as forced labor re-education camps. The phrase meant reform through labor. Political dissidents, religious minorities, and criminals were sent to work farms, factories, mines. Productivity was framed as ideological correction. Labor became confession. Obedience became survival. The system blurred the line between prison and economic engine. North Korean Kwanliso, generational imprisonment, perhaps the most secretive prison system on earth. North Korea's Kwanliso, political prison camps. Here, punishment extends beyond the individual. Entire families are imprisoned for perceived political disloyalty. 3 generations, condemned together, forced labor, starvation, public executions. Escape is nearly impossible. Information rarely leaves. These camps do not simply punish dissent, they attempt to erase its bloodline. Robben Island, years as punishment. Off the coast of South Africa stood Robben Island. During apartheid, it housed political prisoners, including Nelson Mandela, imprisoned in 1964, held for 18 years on the island. Hard labor in limestone quarries, limited contact, censorship of letters. The system sought to weaken resolve through time, but something unexpected happened. Instead of extinguishing leadership, the prison refined it. Mandela emerged not broken, but tempered. The irony was historic. The state tried to bury a movement. It cultivated a symbol. Epilogue. The shadow that remains from Roman mines to island cells, from frozen Siberia to tropical exile. The pattern repeats. Prisons are rarely just about crime. They are about power. Who defines it? Who fears losing it? And who must be silenced to preserve it? Walls do not simply contain. They communicate. They say, this is what happens when you resist. But history carries another message. Even in the darkest systems, the human spirit resists erasure. Some prisons collapse. Some regimes fall. Some walls turn into museums. And when they do, the silence breaks. Because stone remembers everything, and so do we. And when the gates finally rust, when the guard towers empty, when the chains are locked behind museum glass, something unsettling remains. Pause. Not ghosts. Not echoes, but questions. Because in the end, the most brutal prison systems were never just about the people inside them. They were reflections of the societies that built them. Mirrors made of iron and stone, showing how far fear can push humanity into darkness. And long after the doors close, long after the sentences end, history keeps watch. Waiting, recording, remembering. Who built the cages and why?